Toparena! Hey, Chris in the house with another Raid Shadow Legends video bringing the news. Yeah, we're going to have two champions rebalances straight to it. These two dudes here, the first from the Togron tribes, Togron the Conjoined is going to be rebalanced. So we're going to have new things about this champion. What makes me a little bit worried, I don't even know if the champion is going to become good, but what I know it's that on Cintranos Cursed Seed S20 he is on the second wave and he's a pain to deal with, a pain. So this guy getting buffed is going to be a problem. Let's take a look how he will become. Okay, we have here Togron, a legendary void affinity support type from the Ogre faction, and that's how his kit is going to be right now. The A1, at the moment it is attack one enemy has 20% of chance of applying a buff spread effect. Take a random buff from each ally and place it on all ally. It's a very interesting A1, unique, and for a long time we used that with a combo with Yannicka to spread the shields. It was a good strategy. Now let's see how it goes to be. Attack one enemy has 70% of chance of applying buff spread effect, taking one random buff from each ally and place it on all enemies. So huge improvement on the chance. Huge improvement, like more than triple the time of the chance. So amazing. Just by that I read amazing. A2, heals all allies by 20% of this champion max HP, and this champion has a lot of HP. A lot. We're talking about 21k base HP. And places 30% increase the speed buff on all allies for 2 turns. Also places continuous use buff for 2 turns on all allies who current HP is below 50% of the initial heal. It's going to be heal all allies by 20% of the champion max HP, stays the same. Places increase the speed buff on all allies for 2 turns, stays the same. Also places a continuous use buff and a block debuffs buff on all allies for 2 turns. Okay, so no more conditionals for the continuous use and the additional of the block debuffs. Good, decent, makes him have a better quality as a support. A3, Brother's Generosity, increases the turn limit of all allies by 20% and places increased accuracy buff on all allies for 2 turns, then removes all debuffs from all allies. Okay, 5 turn cooldown. Now it is remove all debuffs from all allies, increases the turn limit of all allies by 20% plus an additional of 2% for each debuff removed, then places increase accuracy buff on all allies for 2 turns. Okay, it changed entirely the skills. It doesn't sound like it changes, but changed the order of the things, and I think it became more interesting. Now you have more potential of speed boosting. You know, if you're facing heavy debuff teams, you have more potential of speed boosting. This is interesting. And the passive, let's see. Feel your bellies. Increase how it was. Increase the champion max HP by 10% every time they use an active skill. Stacks up to 50%. That's a lot. The heal is going to be massive with that. It's a red massive. Also increase each ally max HP by 5% every time they use an active skill. Stacks up to 50%. Reset each round will not increase max HP of bosses. Okay. Really interesting passive. It can boost your champion's team's HP and his HP, which is really cool. Let's see how it comes after the buff. Increases allies damage dealt by 10% if they currently have less HP than the target. If an ally's HP is equal to or greater than the target, increases their damage dealt by 20%. Increases champion and each ally's max HP by 10% every time this champion uses an active skill. Stacks up to 50%. resets each round. Also increase each ally max HP by 5% every time they use an active skills. Stacks up to 50%. Reset each round. Will not increase the max HP of bosses. Well, Togron now became a massive interesting champion for Chimera and Hydra. Because when we have compositions that are based on max damage, we only care about champions that are able to give us more damage, that boosts our damage passively. So now this champion, Togron, becomes a huge champion that we can use. Because we can put like 9 protection pieces on this champion, stockpile the continuous use and the other buffs that he uses, and he will grant us 20% more damage. In Hydra, for example, he becomes automatically a meta champion for Thunder teams. That is the world record about damage. It's using this kind of strategy, and Thunder, this champion automatically becomes a meta champion to that. This is going to be incredible. This champion is a vault champion right now, and after that it will be a really good composition piece for teams around max damage for Hydra if you have a Thunder on your team. Yeah, if the goal it was to take him out of the vault, you will take it out of the vault, but only for very strong accounts, I think. Outside of that, I don't think it changed that much. For any other out of the game, it doesn't change that much. But he's going to be a pain even harder on the Cintranos because he's part of very difficult waves on very difficult rooms. Yeah, Togron is going to be a pain to deal with. At the same time, he's going to boost Thunder's damage by a fair good amount. I don't think with Titus he's going to be that useful because we don't want Titus HP to go very high. So we don't want his passive to be boosting Titus HP all the time. So on Thunder teams, I think he's going to be amazing. This champion get a spot on Thunder teams. Outside of that, he's going to be a pain. A pain. Oh gosh. I don't know if I'm happy or not. But let's go. The other champion that we're going to have a buff is none other but one of the most frequent asked champions to get a buff, and he really deserves it because this is right now, in the state it is right now, the worst mythical champion we have in the game. I'm talking about Fjorad the Wolfheart. Champion has a very cool looking design, both forms. It should be a very interesting champion, but it wasn't. Let's see if with this buff he becomes something interesting. Let's take a look. Okay, let's check. Fjorad Wolfheart base form, a mythical champion, spirit affinity, support type from the faction of the dwarfs. On the first form, the base form right now, his Bite of the Wolf. It is, at the moment, attack one enemy 2 times. Each hit has 50% of chance of placing a freeze debuff for 1 turn. If the target is not under freeze, debuff will repeat this attack once. So it hits 4 times. Interesting at the moment, but not very impactful. Let's see how it will become. Attack one enemy 2 times. Each hit has 50% of chance of placing freeze debuff for 1 turn. This debuff cannot be blocked or resisted if the target champion is from the Galen Pact. Okay. So he becomes an enemy of the Galen Pact, which means 4 factions. Interesting. If the target's not under the freeze debuff, we repeat this attack once. Okay. Interesting, but not something that will take him out of the vault. Let's keep reading. A2. Attack all enemies. Places freeze debuff on all enemies for 1 turn and 30% decreases speed debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. If an enemy is from the Galen Pact, places freeze debuff on them for 2 turns instead and grants an extra turn. Okay, it is like this right now. Let's see how it becomes. Attack all enemies, okay, stays the same. Places freeze debuff on all enemies for 1 turn, okay. And 30% decreases speed, still the same. For 2 turns. If an enemy is from the Gallon Pack, places a freeze debuff on them for 2 turns instead. And this debuff cannot be blocked or resisted. Okay, you don't need accuracy on the build to land it if it is from the Gallon Pact. But still niche. Also decreases the target turn meter by 30%. If it is from the Gallon Pact, decrease the turn meter by 50% instead. And grants an extra turn. Okay, this is interesting. Very heavy CC on the Gallon Pact champions. At the same time, decreases turn meter, so he becomes a massive, massive, massive crowd control champion against the Gallon Pact. The passive, best served code. Right now it is, whenever this champion receives a debuff from an enemy, has 30% of chance of placing crazy debuff on the enemy for 1 turn, or calls once per turn. This chance increases to 100% if the target's from the Gallon Pact. Now, after the buff, it will become whenever the champion or an ally, okay, this is massive, receives a debuff from an enemy, has a 30% of chance of placing freeze debuff on that enemy for 1 turn. This chance is increased to 100%, and the debuff cannot be blocked or resisted. Okay. The freeze will not be able to be blocked or resisted if the target's from the Gallon Pact. Massive, 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 massive. When you say Gallon Pact, for you guys that don't remember, we're talking about all this faction here. All the Ogrins, all the Lizardmen, all the Skinwalkers, and all the Orcs. All these 4 factions will be affected by the kit of the Fjorad. Okay, going back to his second form. The Fjorad on the second form is an HP nuker. Let's see if it gets better, because that's what matters. He becomes a very decent crowd control champion on the first form, but very specific usage only against the Gallon Pact. He is a truly good crowd control champion because you cannot block or resist his freeze debuff, and you have many ways of freezing, like all the skills, even the passive. So really interesting. Oh, and he got a speed boost on the base form, which is good. The second form. This is for me what is more important, because I think he's more a nuker than he's a crowd control champion. Let's see if he becomes relevant now. A1, in the past it was attack one enemy. If this attack kills an enemy, resets the cooldown of one of the champion's random skills. Okay. Now it is attack one enemy. We will ignore 50% of the attack as defense. Okay, this by itself is a red damage boost, insane damage boost. If the target's under freeze, debuff ignores 35% of the target's defense. Okay, we have a chance of having a massive A1 with a really good effect. Really good effect. So if the target's freezed, bro, and remember, he can put a refreeze that also freezes and decreases turn meter, and grants an extra turn. So he can freeze everybody, decrease everybody's turn meter, transform because of the extra turn, and then nuke with the second form. A2, Icequake. Right now is attack all enemies, places an extra hit on enemies under freeze, stun, fear, true fear, provoke, or petrification debuffs. Each hit decreases each target max HP by 25% of the damage inflicted up to 50%. Interesting. Each hit also decreases each target's stun meter by 25%. This effect cannot be resisted if an enemy is under freeze, stun, fear, true fear, provoke, or petrification. It's interesting, but lags a little bit in damage. Let's see how it will become. Attack all enemies, places an extra hit on enemies under freeze, stun, fear, true fear, provoke, and petrification. Still the same. Each hit decreases each target's max HP by 25% of the damage inflicted up to 50%. Still the same. Each hit also increases each target's stun meter by 25%. This effect cannot be resisted if enemy is under freeze, stun, fear, true fear, provoke, or petrification. Still the same, but like I said, it lacked on damage. Now the damage multiplier are increased. This is something we're gonna need to test. We only gonna know if this is worth if we test it. And if it is worth it, he becomes a very interesting champion because he's a massive crowd control on the first form that can go to the second form and do a massive nuker if this become a really relevant skill. We're gonna see. Because look how incredibly CC the enemy team is going to be. If you freeze them, then you take their turn meter, then you take their turn meter again with the AoE. Bro, this is crazy. Day 3. Right now is attack one enemy, we ignore 50% of the target's defense. If the target's under freeze debuff, we ignore 100% of the target's defense. If the target's killed while under freeze debuff, also places block or revive on it. It's a very interesting skill single target that can ignore defense, but it missed damage. It missed damage in the current state. It is not a heavy damage dealing skill. Even with all this ignore defense, still lacking on damage. Let's see how it will become. Attack one enemy, still the same. We ignore 50% of the target's defense, still the same. If the target's under freeze debuff, we ignore 100% of the target's defense and block damage. Okay. This is interesting. Freeze targets can be now killed through block damage. This is interesting because we have a very block damage meta like Siegfried, Nice, Nyanhe, Odim, many. So this become really relevant. Second part, if the target's killed under freeze debuff, also places a block or revive debuff, still the same, and places a freeze debuff on all enemies for one turn. Okay, if he kills someone, he will spread a freeze to everybody else. This is interesting. The freeze debuff cannot be blocked or resisted by enemies from the Gale Impact. Okay, and the damage multiplication is increased. This is the most relevant part because, as I said, at the current state, this champion does not hit hard. If it becomes a massive damage dealing skill, the champion has a chance of coming out of the vault because he has a very interesting kit. It's a mythical after all. And the passive. Counterattacks with Ringclave. Day 1. Skill whenever enemy increases the cooldown of any of these champion skills. Okay. Now it will become counterattacks with Ringclave. Skill whenever an enemy increases the cooldown of any of the champion skills. Okay. Whenever an ally is killed, has 50% of chance of placing freeze debuff on all enemies for one turn. Oh gosh. This chance increases to 100% and cannot be blocked or resisted by enemies from the Gale Impact. Okay. He became a lot more interesting. He has freeze, and almost all his skill, it's AoE freeze. So, we had at the moment Tormin be our freezing machine in the game, but the Fjorad will replace Tormin as the most annoying freeze machine in the game with this new kit. We just need to see if that's enough. Everything that we're seeing here, if that's enough to bring this dwarf out of the vault, because we're gonna need him to do damage. We're gonna need this skill to do damage. We're gonna need this skill to do damage for this champion to be a worth champion, you know. If these skills still not hitting good, probably we're not going to use him just because of the freeze. Even more, because the freeze most of the time is conditioned of the enemy being from the Gale Impact factions. Okay, so if the damage is high, if the increased multiplier of the A3 and the A2 of the second form, it is enough, this champion can be taken out of the vault and become an interesting champion to play with. Let's wait for the damage test, because when we get access to it on the test server and we'll be able to test it, that's the verdict about how good it was, the buff or not. Togron, okay, really really interesting. He's going to have a niche usage. We already know he's going to be meta on Trunda teams for the Hydra, but it will make our life harder on Synthrenas. Fjorad is everything about the multiplication of the damaging dealing skills. If it is good, the champion becomes good. If it's still bad, he will be kept in the vault. So, anxious to test it on the test server. As soon as we have access to it, we're gonna share the results with you guys. As always, if you like this kind of video, do not forget to remember, it's all about arena.